Chapter 1 is solving linear equations, so we're going to start with section 1.1, which is solving simple equations, which is 1 and 2-step equations. The learning objective is we are learning to write and solve simple equations. So you want to add these to your notes or to your notebook. The inverse operations are two operations that undo each other. So you should remember that the opposite of addition is subtraction, right? And vice versa. The opposite of multiplication is division. And the last one, which you might not remember, is the opposite of squaring something is to square root it. These are all the inverse operations. Definitely add these vocabulary words to your notes. I would pause the video to add them. Equation is when two expressions are equal. The addition and subtraction property of equality just says adding and subtracting the same number from each side of the equation produces an equivalent equation. Okay, definitely need to know this word. So here are our first two examples. Remember, the goal is to isolate the variable. You are solving for what x equals, or in number 2, what y equals. So here's our variable. I have x minus 7 equals negative 6. Remember, you could do whatever you want to an equation as long as you do it to both sides of the equal sign. So I have x minus 7 equals negative 6. In order to eliminate the minus 7, I'm going to add 7. Because negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Cancels it out. But if I add 7 on the left, I have to add 7 on the right. So I'm left with x equals negative 6 plus 7 is 1. Now the best thing about math is if you go back and plug in or substitute your solution into the original equation, you will know if you did this correctly. Substitute in your answer for x, 1. Minus 7 equals negative 6. 1 minus 7 is indeed negative 6. So we know we did this number 1 correct. Number 2, y plus 3 and 4 tenths equals 5 tenths. So I have to do the opposite of adding 3 and 4 tenths, which is subtracting 3 and 4 tenths. Again, if I do it on the left, I have to do it on the right. So I'm left with y equals 5 tenths minus 3 and 4 tenths is negative 2 and 9 tenths. That is our solution. And we're going to substitute it back in just to make sure. Let's write the original equation. We did this correctly. Substitute in your negative 2 and 9 tenths plus 3 and 4 tenths. Does that equal 5 tenths? Well, negative 2 and 9 tenths plus 3 and 4 tenths is 5 tenths, which equals 5 tenths. We're good to go. Question 3, we tend to freak out when we see fractions, but fractions are actually really easy to eliminate, so you don't have to deal with them anymore. The equation is negative 3/4 n equals negative 2. Let's note that when I multiply a fraction by the reciprocal, you get 1. That is how you can eliminate a fraction when it comes to it being multiplied to something else. So, negative 3/4 multiplied by the reciprocal, and you have eliminated it. Well, you got a solution of 1. So I'm just going to rewrite my original equation. So to eliminate negative 3/4, what is the reciprocal, the flip? Negative 4/3. But if I multiply the left side of the equation by negative 4/3, I have to multiply the right side by negative 4/3. Negative 4/3 over here on the left times negative 3/4 on the right. This all simplifies to a giant 1. So you're left with n equals negative 2 times negative 4/3. Just multiply the fraction straight across is 8/3. Leave it as a fraction. Don't go decimal mode. As long as it's in simplest form, that's perfectly fine. We are going to substitute it back into our original equation just to make sure we did it correctly. So negative 3/4, I'm going to times it by my solution, which is 8/3. Does that equal negative 2? I'm going to change my colors. Negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. And 4 times 3 is 12. And this simplifies to negative 2, which is equal to that negative 2. So we're good. Number 4, we have an equation. Pi times x equals 3 times pi. Remember, when they are right next to each other, a number and a variable, or in this case, pi and a variable, that means multiplication. And what is the opposite of multiplication? Division, the inverse. So I'm going to divide both sides by whatever it is I need to get rid of. In this case, it's the coefficient of pi to isolate the x. I'm going to divide by pi, divide by pi. Now, over here, I have, I deleted it. A similar problem which you might see would be 3x equals 12. Okay, these two, the 3 and the x, the coefficient and the variable, are joined by multiplication. So you would divide both sides by 3 to get your solution. This is the same type of problem, except instead of a coefficient of 3, we're just using pi. But pi divided by pi is 1. So I'm left with x. And then 3 pi divided by pi, these pi's will cancel out to give you 1. It's just equal to 3. So let's go back to our original equation. Pi x equals 3 pi. Substitute in our solution, which was x equals 3. So pi times 3 equals 3 pi. And yes, we do have our correct solution. So now try a few problems on your own on the worksheet attached.